Today I want to try to do something I haven't done before. I honestly feel like I start so many videos with that same sentiment, but I just like trying new things. I got this book, The Wild Dyer, and I fell in love with it. I've always wanted to dye my own fabric. I've always wanted to do everything myself. I would love to start from a plant or an animal and end up with a garment. That's kind of my ultimate goal, whether I'm growing flax or cotton and spinning and weaving, or raising sheep and spinning and knitting. I would love to be able to do everything step by step, starting at the very beginning. So this will just get me a little bit closer to that kind of dream that I have, where I'm gonna learn about the natural dyeing process. Not only was this book informative, it's an absolute vision. I love the aesthetic of this book. It drives me crazy. I feel like it's the life that I've always wanted to have. The photographs in it are so magical and calming, and they just pull me in. I want to be a part of this world. I want to learn this process, and I want to do it justice. So I'm gonna try fabric dyeing today using elderberries that I've grown in my yard. And I don't feel like all the information about processing berries for dye was in this book, so I did a little bit of research online, and I read that when you dye fabric using berries, you have to be very gentle because the fabric can go from berry color to brown pretty quickly. So everything I read was kind of like gently simmering and really monitoring the color that's coming out of the berries and knowing when to pull it from the heat source. The other thing that I read about using berries to dye fabric was that rinsing the fabric post dye bath can be kind of altering with regards to what color you end up with. If you rinse with an acid wash, like putting lemon juice in with the rinse, you can get like vibrant colors, whereas if you rinse with something like more alkaline, like baking soda, you can get a gray. So I'm really curious about that, and it said something like even when you wear it and you sweat in it, it will literally change color on you. So it's a living dye, and it's going to be ongoing, living in my fabric, kind of changing and ebbing and flowing, and it's gonna mellow out with age. So over the course of its lifetime, it will be different colors depending on whether or not I was hot and sweaty that day, whether or not when I rinsed the fabric after washing it on a hot and sweaty day, if I rinsed it in baking soda water or lemon juice water. And part of me is excited about that, and part of me is also intimidated about it because I don't really have time to babysit my clothing. I have a lot of things going on at any given time. So we're just gonna jump in and see what happens. The process is a little intimidating because there's lots of steps, but I think as long as I read this beautiful book, I will be able to get through it. So first things first, I need to go harvest some more elderberries, and I'm gonna take you with me. I didn't want to just harvest the elderberries, I wanted to actually cut them back and prune them quite a bit. I would say half of it done, but I am pressed for time because this whole fabric dyeing process is a multi-layered step-by-step situation, and some of the steps take hours. So it's already 3 p.m. on Sunday. I have no idea how I'm gonna finish this and be ready for my work week 9 a.m. Monday morning tomorrow. And now we're gonna get down to the process of dyeing. And I'm kind of scared to go through this little mess on the floor that I've created here because I know these elderberries are teeming with bugs and critters. Everybody loves the elderberries, not just me. So as I go through them, I know I'm gonna find surprises. I also know that getting the berries off of the stems is tedious and time consuming, and I have to scour this fabric right now, which takes a couple hours. So the process of scouring is basically preparing the fabric to accept the dye. If you don't scour it, it's just gonna kind of color it, but it'll wash out quickly. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill up this pot with water. We're going to bring it to a rapid boil, and then we're gonna add a little bit of eco-friendly soap and some washing soda and boil the fabric for 2 hours until the water is yellow. So let's get that process going, and then I will go through the berries and start getting them off the stems. I feel like I'm crawling in bugs, peeps. I'm an outdoorsy person, but I'm not a huge fan of bugs, and they dominate the outdoors. I am loving this process so far. It's messy, it's time consuming, but it smells amazing. This soap smells delicious, and I'm not a huge fan of very synthetic fragrances. I wouldn't necessarily call it synthetic. It's a very eco-friendly, pure, natural soap, which is why I'm using it specifically for this process. But I guess it has a strong fragrance to it. But once I diluted it in the water and put in the washing soda, everything just smells delicious. It smells like a gourmet laundromat, if you could imagine what that might smell like. And just this whole boiling process, it feels so homey and nurturing, and it reminds me I actually have chicken broth on the stove, so I have to go attend to that quickly, and then I'm gonna get back to this tedious berry process. It's actually already stained my hands quite a bit, so I'm excited to see what it does to the fabric. Now with elderberries in particular, you want to be careful because the green berries have a decent amount of cyanide in them, to the point where if you made elderberry syrup and you had the green berries in there, you could poison yourself to death. So I do get a little creeped out with the elderberry. Oh my God. Okay, the pot is moving. It's sliding around and it shouldn't do that. That could have been a huge burn down my leg if it had slid off and fell and opened. So that's creeping me out. I don't know, maybe there's too much liquid. I'm gonna kind of let the liquid evaporate and put that back on. Wow, that was kind of creepy. So anyway, back to the poisoning. Because I'm not eating this, I don't have the same types of fears. However, I am gonna be boiling this, and I'm just not sure if the vapors will contain cyanide, and I don't want to poison myself or my family. That's not the goal here, and I do concern myself with those types of things quite a bit. I would say more so than your average folk. But anyway, this is a dark tangent that I don't really want to elaborate on. Oh, the amount of bugs that are just kind of crawling around. You know me, I'm not a huge bug fan, but I don't want to boil them. I want them to escape, and escape they are into my home. Just don't tell my husband. He wouldn't be happy about his new neighbors. Isn't that a beautiful color? I wonder what color the fabric's gonna be. Okay, so clearly the water is now that yellow color they were talking about. While the fabric was scouring, I thought to myself, what the heck am I gonna do for 2 hours while I wait for this fabric to boil and cook? And it actually took about 2 hours to get all of the berries off the stems. So the timing worked out perfectly. Now we're going to work on mordanting mordanting the fabric. Mordanting. Okay, so I've heard of that before, but it's just funny coming out of my own mouth. When you mordant the fabric, it helps the dye adhere to the fibers. Again, this is all about creating dyed fabrics that will not fade over time, that will not wash out with each wash cycle. And clearly with the living fabrics, and specifically the berry fabrics, I think that that does happen a little bit, at least with the fading and the altering of color. But all of these steps are gonna help prevent that from happening rapidly. So we're gonna go ahead and mordant the fabric. I'm gonna figure out what that is and I'll explain it to you. Okay, people, we've hit a snag. This is clearly not a same-day job. It's my bad that I didn't read ahead of time. I actually did read this book cover to cover. I found it that interesting, that beautiful, but I didn't actually retain all of the information. It's a lot to take in if you've never done this before, but it looks like the mordanting process is an overnight situation. You're supposed to soak the fabric for at least an hour to pre-wet it. Done. We boiled it for 2. Then we're going to create the mordant solution in a separate bowl, then add it to the pot of water, bring to a boil, simmer for an hour, and you're supposed to let the fabric soak in it overnight. However, these berries are not going to keep until overnight, so I'm gonna, ooh, wow, a bug on bug. We have and a third bug. We have a hovering bug, and then we have a worm, and then we have something else on the worm. So we're gonna address that in a minute. We're trying to kindly remove all creatures back to where they came. But anyway, I am going to speedily mordant this fabric, and hopefully that doesn't create a lot of problems for me in the future. I assume it will, but we'll deal with it in the future. After I scoured this fabric for a couple hours, I went ahead and just rinsed it off in the bath. All of the yellow water came out. Technically, I am supposed to let this dry, and then the mordant is a mathematical ratio, and you're supposed to do the total dry weight of the fabric divided by 100 and then multiply that times 5, and that's how many grams of mordant you're supposed to use when we're doing this next bath here. But I don't have time to let this fabric dry, so I'm going to measure it wet, and then I'm just gonna guesstimate and maybe cut the total in half. I don't even have the strength to get all the water out of this. Wringing it out would require a gorilla. It came out to 74.7 grams, which I think is probably a ridiculous amount. In the book, it says you're never gonna use more than 2 or 3 teaspoons. We're basically gonna mix the allium acetate in with a little bit of water to get it kind of dissolved. And I'm going to put maybe 1.5 teaspoons in this pot and add a little bit of water, and we'll try to whisk it together, see what happens, and then we'll add the rest of the water to it. We'll bring the pot to a simmer, we'll simmer the fabric in there for about an hour, and then we'll see what happens. I'll probably pull it at that point, and then we'll be on to step 3. That is beautiful. I feel like a witch. So we removed the mordanted fabric off of the burner, and now we have the elderberry batch on. I don't want to heat it up too much because I'm scared of ruining the integrity of the berries, and I think I'm going to strain this soon, and then I'm going to put the fabric into it. But first I have to rinse the mordant out of the fabric. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we will strain this dye vat, and then we'll put the wet fabric into the strained liquid, and we'll keep it in there for as long as we feel might be right, and then we're taking it out and we're gonna see what happens. So I'm gonna strain the elderberry dye vat through here into this bowl. We should then have our liquid. Then I'm gonna put it back on the hot plate over here and simmer it for a bit with the fabric in it, and I think after that we'll be close to done. Whatever color this fabric turns out, it's just going to be gorgeous. Well, I completely ran out of time and energy last night. So what I did was I just threw the soaking wet fabric over a metal ladder and put it outside. I knew it was going to be doing a lot of dripping, and I didn't want it to drip in my office, and I didn't want to use one of my wooden drying racks because I hadn't washed out the dye yet, and I figured it could potentially stain the rack, and then when I dry like white clothes over it, it would get onto my white clothes. So I'm just not really sure how the fabric handles yet, how much it's going to continue to fade and wash out, what it might stain when I wash it with other things, but I kind of want to treat it like a normal garment. I don't really want to hand wash it all the time. And the color is really interesting. So as it was drying outside, it kept getting deeper and darker, and just this beautiful shade of like maroon, magenta, purple, wine color. I don't know exactly what color to call it, but there are some discrepancies with the dye. It almost has a few areas that kind of seem a little tie-dyed, and I think that's because my pot was so small and the fabric was so thick and crunched in there that it really didn't have a lot of space to penetrate all of the fibers evenly. Even though we ended up pouring it into the large basin, and my daughter sat there for like a good 60 minutes just kind of working and kneading it and really smashing the dye into the fabric, that's my best guess as to why it didn't color evenly the entire length of the fabric. I don't know, maybe there's another reason, but I'm not sure. Regardless, to say I do need to invest in a larger pot. They are just so expensive. I really hesitate to do it, but I'm gonna bite the bullet eventually and make sure I have a larger pot where the fabric can really be swimming in that bath and not super tight and crumpled. So after it dried overnight outside, I did not have the time to really do a solid rinse with it. Plus my work week had started, and I figured I'm just gonna wash and dry this in the washing machine and see what happens. So this is what happened after I washed it in the washing machine. And this color is really beautiful. It's like a periwinkle blue. I'm gonna work on my technique to try to create a more even dye bath next time so we don't have this streaking. I don't know if the camera can pick up the kind of tie-dye effect that I'm talking about, but here's some of the streaking. And so I wanna prevent that moving forward. I'll try to just figure out what I did wrong and do better next time. But for my first time around, it was really fun and I really enjoyed the outcome, and I have the perfect idea with what I'm going to use this fabric for. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing a Peter Pan Lost Boys photo shoot, and while I don't really think of blue with regards to forest garmentry, I do think because I hand dyed this with elderberries, I'm gonna make a fitted bodice using a pattern that I've had from the past and one that I actually made a video on before, and I'm gonna really just kind of dirty it up and ramshackle it up and make kind of a cute fitted bodice to go with a pair of pants that I'm gonna make, and I'm putting together a whole ensemble to look like a forest dwelling lost boy, and I just want to have fun with it. So maybe I'll throw some patches on, maybe I'll throw some large intentional stitching, but I'm gonna make a video out of it. And let me show you the hat that I got. Oh my gosh, I love this hat. I got it off of Etsy. So here is the hat that I purchased. I'm probably gonna be wearing my hair down when I put the hat on for the photo shoot, but I purchased this hat for the look, and I made these earrings. I'm not sure if they're gonna go, but I'm gonna try to put the whole thing together in the next video, like I said, and we'll see what works, what doesn't, and I'm just really excited to have some fun, and maybe it'll end up being my Halloween costume this year. Who knows? It's really warm. It's an amazing hat. The quality is awesome. I'm gonna link where I purchased it below in case you want one. I highly recommend. Really nice hat. If you've made it to the end of this project and you've enjoyed it, if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel, it means the world to me. I would love to hear your feedback. Please comment below. I promise to respond. And if you do end up subscribing, make sure you hit that little bell symbol, because unfortunately I'm not really able to upload consistently, and I don't want you to miss a video, so that little bell will alert you to the next time I release one. And until next time, I will see you again soon. Bye!